Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Agency Life. On a nice sunny day, the sun is shining on Matthew from Articulate Marketing. Matthew and I go way back. Welcome to the show.
It's lovely to be here. I mean, even in these difficult times, it's nice to talk to an old friend.
Yes, we're introduced to each other through the partner program in HubSpot. Probably, I'm going to say maybe 6-7 years ago. It's going back a while.
You did our onboarding, I think.
I did your onboarding, that's right. And a lot has changed in the last few years with you guys. But Matthew, please tell us, how did you manage to arrive in this wonderful world of agency life?
Well, I would say I sort of drifted into it, but I found my way to it through being a freelance writer, freelance journalist, really. I had sold a previous business in 2000. I used to make computer games for Lego and people like that. And I was sort of mooching about a bit. I learned to fly and did a few other sort of fun things on a sort of sabbatical. And one of the fun things I did was become a writer, and I ended up being a freelance contributor to Wired and a few other things. And I also had a fantastic gig writing reviews of business jets for the Rob Report, which sounds like a job you sort of made up, but I used to go off flying in these fabulous jets around the place and then come back and write an article about it. Anyway, off the back of that, I had been asked by a government agency here, Quango, the Design Council, and also almost at exactly the same time by Microsoft, to do some corporate work. And I very quickly realized corporate work was just as intellectually stimulating, no business jets though, and much better paid. So I became what you would now call a content marketer. And that was, I was on my own for quite a few years. And then when I met you the first time, we had just started hiring people.
Right.
So there were, I think, even just Claire and Liz at that time, and me.
That's right. There was just a very small number of you. Yep.
But with your help, with HubSpot's help, with I suppose a pivot towards being more of a grown-up marketing agency, we're now 19 people, and we work with companies all around the world and do the inbound digital marketing thing.
Wow. Oh, what a phenomenal growth that you've had. Where's everyone located around, and how have you structured the agency with those 19 people?
Well, when I sold the games business, I promised myself two things. One, I will never hire anyone again. Well, I broke that promise a few years ago. And the second thing I promised was I'd never have an office again. And I was discussing this with a friend yesterday, because at the time I sold Intelligent Games, I had 12,000 square feet of office space, 70 odd people. And I felt like a part-time, unpaid, inexpert facilities manager, right? And I was writing these checks to the landlords and checks to people to, come and do the air conditioning. And I had a receptionist and an office manager. And I'm like, none of this has anything to do with computer games or anything really. It's just overhead. So I managed to keep the promise to myself never to have another office, but it came from this point of principle that it was, it seemed wasteful, it seemed inefficient. It doesn't necessarily mean that I am a remote working agency now to save money, and perhaps we might come on to that. But where is everybody based? Well, I'm in London. I'd like to say we're probably all in our bedrooms at the moment, because
I think that's where everyone is, or in a cupboard hiding from the children.
Yes. Well, one of the small delights of the situation is actually having video conferences and seeing people's kids, and also meeting people's partners and things, which we haven't been doing so much. It's been suddenly a little bit of sense of social solidarity.
That's nice. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I was telling you where I'm in London. We have people all over the UK, in all the four nations, and we have colleagues in Vienna, Bucharest, Valencia, in Holland. So there's a small international or overseas aspect, and then there's a lot of diversity here in the UK. When we could, we used to fly them all in every couple of months for a meeting, but it's quite interesting when you see all the receipts about where everyone's coming from. This is such a they're all over the place.
Right. So to talk us through that, because you obviously that's quite a progressive thing, and we're recording this in March. There's a lot going on in the world. If uh, we could probably put this in a time capsule, and in 10 years' time, everyone will remember this global pandemic. So it is relevant from like lots of different areas. But you had that foresight 7 years ago to go remote based on a place where a similar story to a lot of agencies. They have this great story about why they started the agency or why they do the things they do. I'm always fascinated by that. So you had been paying all this money, putting all this receipts out and just going, oh, I can't do this anymore. And that's why you went remote. How has that logistically worked? So you say you need to hire someone. How do you do your interviews? And yes, talk to us about how often you get together or what the plans are around that. Because there are people out there who've never done this before.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's start with hiring, and then there are other aspects of it. So when we recruit, we do this video conferencing. We use a version of Zoom for the interviewing. Quite often we meet people for the first time in person 2 or 3 months after they've started work, which is odd, but actually works fine for us. We advertise very little. Most of our recruitment is done sort of through our website, through our channels. We luckily have a very big audience for our blog at articulatemarketing.com.
Great, thank you.
And that seems to generate a lot. And there are a few boards that you don't pay for that target remote workers and appeal to them. So that works. What we have found is recruitment is actually very easy with remote workers because a lot of people want to do it. So when we posted our last round of recruitment last sort of September, October, we ended up we thought we had 2 or 3 vacancies. We ended up hiring 5 people because there were such exceptional candidates. We had nearly 1,000 applications for that.
Wow.
We didn't pay any advertising, and we didn't pay any recruitment agents. And we got amazing people, like a woman who had run her own agency to 100 people and sold it, and just wanted to live this very remote life with her family, remote working life, I should say, with her family, not have the stress of running a business. She would never have come to work for us if we had said, you've got to come to an office in London. And yet we're getting this amazing experience in town. We have hired another woman who had been a head teacher for quite a long time and wanted to change careers, but an inspirational woman. She'd done TED Talks and things like that. And she commuted and will do when the restrictions are lifted between 2 different countries because of her family. And again, didn't want to do what she was doing, but came to us because we were remote working and we offered it. There are some other things that we do and agencies have to do to be attractive, and agency brand for recruitment, and we do a lot of work around B Corp and things like that to make sure that we appeal to our potential employees. But for the remote working piece, no, it's not a problem. And actually, one of the things that we found is doing interviewing remotely and collaboratively. So people will see 5, 6 people at different stages of the interview process. We build in quite a lot of tests and homework to see how people perform. And we can sort of evaluate people on a broader range of criteria remotely than we can if you were just doing it on a face-to-face interview. In other words, there's a little bit more room, I hope, for more diversity in the recruitment, and a little bit more recruitment for ability, talent, personality, character, company fit, and much less like, does your face fit when you walk through the door, and have you got a firm handshake, which is
right, which is the history. And can you be on your best behavior and be all sparkly and shiny for 20, 30, 40 minutes, as opposed to this how long would your recruitment process take, the interview and all of that? Like there's obviously a period of time, right?
It usually runs, I've got the hard data, but I would say about 6 weeks on average from to offer. And there's usually another few weeks of faffing around to get people actually sort of lined up and into position. So it's reasonably brisk, and we constantly struggle to make it faster. It's very annoying. What you want for a candidate is for the process to accelerate. as they get closer to the finish line, so that they sort of almost they feel slightly swept off their feet.
Yes.
And more progressively excited as they get closer to it. So that's, but it's also a challenge in a way, because we have people. We want a lot of collegiality in the interviews. We want people to meet as many people as possible and to hear as many voices and opinions about that. So we have, usual interview stuff, recruitment stuff. You have some checklist of questions, you have topics you want to ask, you have exercises. One of the things that we found quite useful is to set people a writing task, or a task appropriate to the role, and evaluate that. And we use an app called workable.com, which has got a bit more expensive in recent years, but it's very good for managing that candidate flow. And we're trying to give everyone a good experience. Another thing that I think is really important, and then I'll stop talking about recruitment unless you have
No, I love this. This is great. Keep going. Yeah.
I think it's really important that you write to everybody. I think it's the most rudest thing imaginable that somebody applies to you for a job and they don't hear from you, or they get an interview and they don't hear from you. And this really happens a lot. So it's not just about accelerating the process for successful candidates. It's also about being fair and direct and upfront with people. We've got one chap who works at Articulate who applied twice before, and a third time, and he got the job. So, I think that's, and he'd gone through various evolutions.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years from the first application to the last. But I think that's rather bless him, it's rather a nice testament to the fact that he felt reasonably well handled the first couple of times and not just brutally rejected or ignored, because he came back for more, and now he works for us and does amazing stuff. So
yeah, I've seen that happen. In fact, I have a friend I guided through the same process with HubSpot. She really wanted to get in. She applied for a role. It didn't work out. The interview, she made a mess of the interview. She admits it, and I said, it's okay. And then we found another role, and I said, come on, get back in. And she did a great job, and now she's in there. So, she was treated well in the first process. I think that's very, very valid. And also, even if it's just a one line going, you didn't, thank you for your submission, you didn't get through, or thank you for your interview. What we found you were lacking were, give a couple of bits of feedback so that somebody can go and work on it, right?
So the feedback on interviews is a really challenging point, and let's follow that rabbit for a second.
Yeah.
I think the difficulty, because we get a lot of requests for why, can you give me some feedback? And that's perfectly understandable, and good on people for asking. But if we're already investing hundreds and hundreds of hours in the recruitment process, and then we get 1,000 applications and 150 ask for specific feedback, it's just too much of an administrative burden. So how do we do that without doing it? So there's a workload requirement. The second issue with giving feedback is there is a small, but I think non-zero risk of saying something in the feedback that lands you in trouble. I mean, goodness me, nobody's going to say, well, we rejected you because of, the colour of your skin or something. Even if, I'm certain nobody at Articulate would do that, or if they did, would actually have the stupidity to admit to it. But it's like giving references when people leave. That there are risks, and there are definitely people out there who go and apply for jobs, ask for feedback, and then have a go. It's a thing. So I'm sorry if that sounds terribly paranoid.
No, this is great. Like, obviously you're dealing with thousands of applicants out, not necessarily agencies are dealing with that, but this is great to learn. They don't want to make mistakes.
Yeah. So I'll come to the point. What we've done is we created, we got everyone together who does interviews, and we said, well, where do people fall down in their application? Where do people fall down in their interview? Where do people fall down with their homework? What are the common reasons for somebody not getting through the process, so that when people ask us, we say, well, we're not giving you feedback because it's too difficult to do that at scale, but here is a really detailed list of, from first-hand experience, where people go wrong. And that might then help. There's also a big article on our website about how to get the job you really want, which is it also intended to be a resource for people. So
beautiful way of doing it, like a frequently asked questions kind of style. Love it.
Yeah, so that's recruitment. I suspect, like a lot of agencies, we're having a hiring freeze now. So perhaps we want to think about maybe some of the other aspects of how we make remote working work.
Share some of that. I'd love to know, because now people are out there trying to figure it all out. What are some of your tips on working remote? What have you learned over the years?
Well, I'm going to start really specifically about video conferences, because this is the thing that we're all going to have to be doing now. Um, it's not enough to install Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever and switch it on. As you know, before we started this call, I was finding the settings on Zoom to improve my appearance and sort of smooth out my
yes.
rather rugged
We're both
top
airbrushed.
Yeah, a little bit of real-time airbrushing in the video. So you want to think a little bit about how you appear. One of my colleagues who does sales for us, he's got a very smart sort of designery shirt that he puts on. And we were teasing him about this because he always looks very dapper on these interviews. And then he sort of kicked back and lifted up his leg. And he was wearing shorts. Yeah. But of course, on a video conference, this is the bit that you see.
This is the bit, yes.
And by the way, I love that blouse. It's very stellar.
Thank you. That's what's my favorite. It's yes, exactly. It's a bit of and I've got my background because I'm on a couch. I'm having a conversation. Yes, I've thought all about this.
And I think that's really important. And a little bit about lighting. A little bit, give the illusion of 3 dimensions. I think we have some people where I've had to sort of say, hey, just move your desk around so that you're not haloed by a window.
Got it. Yeah. Because you can't see them. They're in the shadow. Great idea. Yeah.
I'm really sorry today. I'm not using my headset. I've got one of these little things. It's broken. It's given up the ghost and I haven't had time to fix it. But actually, as you've got a good microphone for the audio quality is really, really important. And I think we've evolved because we do so many video conferences internally. A few things that help just in the etiquette of it. One of the things that's sort of really important for us, cameras always on.
Yes.
Right? Just you can mute yourself off and on if you're typing or you don't want the background noise. But it seems to me, with I might do 4 or 5 hours of video conferencing a day, if someone's got their camera off, they're being rude. It would be like they're texting on their phone in a meeting. That's the vibe it gives.
The equivalent,
It's surprising that, and we sometimes have to slightly morally blackmail clients into putting their cameras on. We haven't got to this yet, but sometimes I said to people when they've gone, oh, I haven't got a camera on my computer. Would you like me to send you one? We need this to be
Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Boom. Next day.
Cameras on. Next thing. This is going to sound really sort of basic, but you've got to give people a break, right? So if you have a 2-3 hour meeting in person, it's perfectly acceptable for someone just to nip up and go get a glass of water or pop out for a pee or something. In a video conference, there's a slight sort of moral pressure to be on the call, and when you open the door and walk away, you're slightly exposing your domestic environment. So what we've evolved is every 45 minutes to an hour, if we're doing a longer call, just going, okay, let's just have a little break now. Everyone switches off their camera, switches off their microphone, and we set a time to be back.
Awesome.
It just sounds so trivial, but it's just giving people that permission. And it's quite nice then, because it means that you can actually keep video conferencing open pretty much on an open channel, working with 3 or 4 colleagues on a project or something. And nobody feels like they're, oh, God, I'm on a conference. It feels like it's just sitting in the office with someone. The other thing as an etiquette, I think it's very important. Again, it's obvious, but turn up on time. And it's really interesting within Articulate, and this is not a new thing for us, but if someone's 2 or 3 minutes late to a conference, they come on, the first thing they say is, I'm really sorry I'm late. 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the standard. So 2 minutes before the start time, that's on time.
That's right, yeah.
And the other part of that, the corollary of that, is now we have to use so many different video conference systems in Google Hangouts, Zoom, Slack, blah, 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 blah. If it's new to you, 10 minutes before the start time is on time, because you've got to install the thing and download it, make sure the audio is working. There's nothing more annoying. You've got 8 people on the call and like one person can't get their bloody microphone working because they didn't get on it beforehand and test.
Yeah. I think preparing for the meeting before the meeting starts is a great one. If it's 5 minutes, sitting yourself down, checking everything, getting in early and waiting for people, great idea. It's like, so it sets the scene, make sure you're there first. If you're the host, get in, sit there, wait. No more than if you were meeting for them for coffee. I don't know about you, Matthew, but I'm always waiting for people. I go early, I do my social media. I'd rather see them walking in the door than me herring in the door. What you remember when we used to go and meet people for coffee?
Yeah, back in the old days. Last week.
Yeah, exactly.
And the last tip I would give, I could go on, but the last substantial tip is we use Dropbox paper, which is a lot like Google Docs or something like this. It's just a shared collaborative online word processor. It's just the one we ended up using. And I would say 9 meetings out of 10, somebody will share their screen and there will be a Dropbox paper on there, and they'll be taking notes, and there'll be the agenda, and people will be dragging things in and editing things together. Even for like stand-up meetings or planning meetings or whatever, there's usually a document. And what's very, very nice about that is that then it becomes self-agenderizing, that's a word, self-limiting. And everyone has access to the document who's on the call. So that, for example, with standing meetings with clients, the link to the Dropbox paper is in the invitation along with the link to, and over time, all the previous minutes just are all piled up in the document. Everything is there. Same with one-to-ones, same with company and planning meetings, same with client meetings. I think that's also, and as you can tell, I talk quite a lot, but if I'm taking notes, it makes me shut up. So that's a good thing for
me. You're like, hang on, I'm not going to say 100 words. I'm going to say 10. So I can type 10. You become succinct. Probably one of my favorite words and favorite kind of movements is succinct. For someone who talks a lot, that's actually what I love as well. I love succinct. I just love it. I will give another one. Go.
No, I love it when people on a conference call, if you've got a lot of people, you have to work much harder to go, I haven't heard from you, Angie. Do you want, what do you think about this? Sophie, have you got a thought? Paul, do you want to say something? That skill of chairing a meeting, especially if you're a talkative, opinionated so-and-so like me, it's quite hard, but it's a thing that we have to learn and do.
And you can see that when the camera's on, you can see where people, you can see someone sort of drifting off. You start to learn how to read their body language. I'll give you another tip because you're displaying it really well there. If anyone's listening to this, you can head on over to YouTube and see the video. Matthew has a beautiful background. His background is tidy.
The foreground isn't tidy.
Doesn't matter. I couldn't care less what the foreground.
I've got all my Lego on the shelves here.
Oh, you're Lego collectors. Or my uncle's been dabbling in that. Yeah.
This side I've got all my vintage computers. So.
Oh wow, goodness, that's very old school. But
there's
the
background. Square of tidiness.
Yes, there's a square of tidiness, and that's really all that matters. Like it is about, because the eye will, if you had a messy background, my eye would be looking past. That's just the way, especially women. It's just, here's a tip for you. It's like women can't focus. You'll know this, Matthews. Women cannot focus on a conversation if there's a mess. You could be saying the house is burning down, I'm not feeling well, I need all these things. We haven't heard one word. If there is a mess in the room, that's what our eyes focus on. It's a thing, right? It's a thing. Men, it wouldn't matter what was behind the place, was like a hoarder's dream. You wouldn't see it, you would hear me, you would listen to me. So very important, if you are in a conversation with a woman specifically, please check your background. In fact, give her nothing to look at would be better. Otherwise, we are probably figuring out how to get into your house and how to fix that.
Or judging you.
Or judging you, or going, oh, messy. My mother, what she used to say, tidy room, tidy mind, so, that kind of thing, So obviously it's difficult working at home. You've got the kids are going to be making a mess, but you can find a corner with a blank screen behind you. The kids can be, the big mess can be in front of you, but a very important thing. I mean, these things that we're taking for granted, but this morning I logged onto LinkedIn and I saw a message from somebody on LinkedIn going, can someone urgently help me? I cannot seem to find any practical tips on working remote. And the questions they were asking were stuff that we are taking for granted. If you can imagine a traditional business owner, they're CEOs who have never done anything else except get in their car, drive to an office, walk past receptionist, sit in their office, and they've walked past all the cubicles. There could be 100 people in that office who have never done anything except that for 10, 20, 30 years. They don't know where to start. So all the those sound basic to you and I, but they are not to somebody out there going, they will say, I wouldn't know how to work remote. I was like, well, you don't have a choice now, mate.
Yeah, and we need to be mindful. Makes me think that we need to be mindful of people like a colleague of my mother's who profoundly dyslexic. So reading and writing things, instructions on how to set up stuff or messages on Slack or, actually not so easy for them. And people who are not so comfortable and familiar with technology, it need a little bit more help and time and thought. It's challenging. Sorry.
I think it's a great opportunity, though. I had this conversation with an agency client that I work with in the UK this morning, and I think right now we're going through this phase of things changing. I'd love to hear how your clients and how you're navigating things being changed. So the marketing plans that we had for the rest of the year, out the door, changes. They need to be different. I feel there's an opportunity if you're there as a business owner, and you can correct me on this. You're a business owner, you're talking to your clients who are also business owners or heads of departments or whatever. They are going through things that you are able to go through. So I think it's time to listen to them and go, what do you need right now? And they're going, I need to figure out how to get this marketing department at home and still as productive as they were last week. That is something you can package and help them and transition them and coach them and do team training on Slack, team training on how to do a team meeting, team training on Zoom. You are don't be sitting there idle and throwing your hands up in the air going, no one's doing marketing. People are needing your help as an agency. You're so versatile. You know all the tech, you know all the tools. We're having this conversation about communication and tips like that. They haven't even figured that out. They wouldn't know where to start. So I think it's a big opportunity. But talk to me about some of the conversations you've been having over the last week with your clients.
Well, let's talk, about clients. You're absolutely right. I mean, I think one of the things as a B Corp, one of our core values is some sort of reciprocity and giving back to our stakeholders and community. And we call that sharing what we learn. So
brilliant.
We spent the last couple of weeks, as well as sort of, running as hard as we can to, make sure the business is okay, make sure people are okay, and redo planning assumptions. And there's a lot of work going on for this. It's scary and lots of unknowns and lots of unknown unknowns. But one of the things is so for existing clients, we're offering that counselling about how we work remotely, both on an informal like account manager to contact, but also actually formally like, look, if you would like to have a conversation with us, we'll do that. Just set up a call, we'll share what we know, we'll brainstorm. So the second thing we've been doing last week, we put out a couple of very big articles, one of which you saw was on my personal geekboss.com blog about the management of remote workers as opposed to the technology of it.
Yeah, a fabulous piece, and I'll put the links in the show notes here. It was fantastic. Thank you, Matthew, because I did a short video on the very basics with a very basic video and a very basic checklist, which will just get people started, and then we can add in your advanced tactics and strategies. Thank you. We'll share that out.
And also a long list of like an index of resources, 300 different resources for people on articulate marketing. And so we're trying to do that. We've also, like everybody I'm sure is doing, I'm making an effort to make sure I'm talking to my opposite number in all our clients and account managers as well. We have weekly calls with them, but actually to try and, so with one, for example, I've now got a weekly half-hour call just booked with my peer in the organization.
Yes.
Most of that's going to be just operational marketing stuff, but the opportunity there is, how's it going, Derek? What's going on? How, can we help us? and talk about that. And I think that upping the level of contact and trying as hard as possible to kind of go, this is the work we've been doing, but now is the time for all of us to box clever. How can we help? How can we support you? And making sure that there's also this human dimension to those relationships, that you understand that you're in a partnership together. And I mean, we need other things to get through this. We need unbelievable amounts of science to solve this problem, but we also need a lot of human kindness, and we need to stand together as people. Right. Everybody is in the same boat. This virus doesn't care if you are a CEO or a street cleaner. No. We're all in it together, and we all have to kind of recognize that shared obligation, I think. And that's going to be something, and if anything good comes out of it, if that becomes a legacy of it, that will be a plus. The other thing that the other thing that we're doing, of course, is inward facing. There's a lot more work. When you work remotely, there's different kinds of risks for employees. There's a risk of isolation, there's a risk of loneliness. It tends to, not exclusively, but it tends to attract introverted, sometimes melancholic personalities. Right. Just the nature of it. I'm an introverted, melancholic personality in many ways. And, that's why I didn't want to go to an office anymore. That and the monthly salary bill. But so, you have to be extra careful with that. So, we have long had a chief happiness officer whose job is morale and engagement and making sure people are okay. And she's doing calls with them. She's doing surveys. She's done all kinds. When we had company events, she was organizing those. Mm-hmm. In this circumstance, there is a need for more of that, and it needs to be everybody to everybody in the company. So one of the things that she's done, and I know other companies are doing this as well, is setting up daily, drop-in social calls. So we have an afternoon tea, and we have a happy half hour at sort of 5 p.m. so that there can be sort of non-alcoholic and possibly alcoholic versions of this, depending on your mood and your availability.
Take out the mood. Brilliant idea. Love these.
They're in every day, weekends included, and there's just a meeting link. Now, sometimes, a mob show up because they've come off another meeting with a client and they all go, let's go on to the happy half hour. Sometimes it's a couple of people and you just have a chat. But that I think is really, really important. We've done some practical things as well, like we've given everyone access to Babylon virtual GPs, so they can book up a doctor's appointment online. Where we've signed up, everyone's got a subscription to Calm, the online meditation app.
Love that app. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, some great stories in there. Stephen, what's his name? The actor. Stephen Fry has the most amazing stories in there. His voice is very, very calming. Very good tip there, because obviously people can't do the gym memberships and things like that. Great. What other tools do you give them?
We use Slack, of course, and there are sort of random channels in there. One of them is called Fitness Legitness, and people are posting little challenges of learn this dance move. Obviously not for me.
Come on, never say never, Matthew.
And but I challenge everyone in the company to go and do this. So that it's not always an app, but it's sometimes a kind of a communal thing. We are just today grappling with something else, but that's very specifically Corona related. And it's evolving, and one of my colleagues and I had a conversation about it this morning, which is why it's in my mind. What we want to do is set up something like a buddy system that we use when we onboard new people. But in this case, what we want is a buddy system where everybody has two buddies, right? Somebody who is responsible for looking after, being supportive for them. Mm-hmm. And then they are responsible for being supportive for someone else. So for every single person in the company, someone is checking in on you, making sure you're okay, how are you feeling, and taking your anxieties and stress. But you've got someone in the chain that you can go, I'm worried about this, or this has happened, or my kids are home. So that there's a sort of a circle of collegiality.
I like that. See, instead of one-on-one going, what's your problem, my problem? Because then that might intensify it, as opposed to, sometimes do you ever have this where you're going, you're not allowed to speak, you're just allowed to talk, and you get it all out. And that's it. Because that helps. And then that person can let it all out with someone else, as opposed to sometimes you can listen to someone and then you might give them advice, and it's like, no, it's not about that. Just listen, and just give them tips if they want it, but like, listen. That's brilliant idea. I had mentioned the buddy system to a client yesterday, because there was all the information was kind of channeling into one point, the office manager, and she was getting very overwhelmed because sometimes people had been newly out in the world, experienced people coping really well, new people kind of wigging out, and she was getting that. So we've set up a buddy system, but I like the chain is even better.
Yeah, and I mean, this is going to sound sad and anxious, but I'm concerned as the course of this thing runs, people are going to be dealing with some quite difficult things, family matters and possible bereavements, and care for children, and I'm pretty sure no one's going to run out of toilet paper, but there are some other things that might happen. And I think this is where, if you've got those relationships starting to happen now, we can build a little bit of resilience, a little bit of love and support for people.
Brilliant. And then if someone in that buddy system is particularly concerned, it's not about being a professional counsellor, but they are particularly concerned about the welfare of some, they've had a very deep conversation and they're worried, they can, like, everyone knows that you're taking care of each other, that the happiness officer gets a flag and go, please, can you check on this person?
Exactly.
Like, it's just,
so
don't hold it all up. Exactly,
and well-being and domestic, and we have an employee assistance program as well, so that we don't expect that if you are in your caring role for somebody, it's not all on you.
No.
But you're there to kind of, and a trivial example might be if we have one or two people who might fall into some vulnerable categories for age, for example, and if they need some help just getting some shopping sorted out, or if they've got a couple of kids running about and they just can't can't concentrate, maybe just flagging that to me and go, this person needs a little bit of time just to sort out their domestic arrangements. It's just being listening and caring and thinking.
Yeah, and I think that you must have experienced this over the years. I certainly have. If I ever for some reason was in a traffic at the wrong time of day, if I did get in the car and it was 9 o'clock and I went, this is ridiculous. Like this, do people do this every day? It's a long time since I've had to do a commute. Number of years. I lived right next door to the office in HubSpot so that I didn't have to do a commute. That's how a commute allergic I am, So it's been years since I've been in a car in traffic, but that degradate, that just keeping you, wearing you down year after year after year of doing all that. I think
about a 2-hour commute. I mean, it's painful.
Yeah, it does wear you down and puts so much pressure. I think we're going to experience, a lot of people are going, oh my goodness, I didn't have to do that and I could still be productive. I think we're going to see the revolution that I've been waiting for from the working environment. And I don't even have kids, so the creche thing, the whole thing, we're going to see that revolution hopefully come out, which is one of the good things. Just on the happiness officer, can you speak about what tool do you use to manage the happiness of the office? Because I know there's a number of different ones out there. Which one, when you're doing a survey, and can you explain that? Because again, you and I know all these tools, we've been using them for years. Somebody didn't even know they exist. So what tool do you use to measure the happiness?
Okay. So we use two things and a project. So in terms of technology, Liz has built an evolving questionnaire. She calls it the Happyometer in Google Forms. It's the simplest thing ever. It's not an app that we pay a load of money for.
Awesome.
But it's at a nice sort of technology level for her that she can update the questions and respond to changing circumstances with it. So that goes out every month, and it's arm twistingly semi-obligatory, right? And and she then reports up to me and to the team leaders. Kind of here's some trends, because some of the numbers are, how stressed are you? Have you got the tools you need? The usual sorts of questions, and they sort of fluctuate, and you can kind of correlate the fluctuations with, relationship issues with clients or workload stress or something like that. So that's useful, aggregated in an anonymous feedback.
Good.
She also she knows who is filling in the forms. I don't. So it is anonymized through her. So she is able also, there's some narrative fields in that, to use that to see if there are patterns and trends or issues that she needs to address in her role that don't have to come to me. So it's a mix of qualitative and quantitative. She will do a call with everybody, a one-to-one every month, and they will also do a one-to-one with their team leader. So there's a fair amount of sort of that kind of engagement, and that's not a formal tool or something, but it is part of the process. So that's one thing. The other tool we use, which is perhaps less relevant for well-being, but more relevant for engagement alignment, is a tool called Workbot. Work.bot is the URL. And they were a client of ours. Nice. Emil's a nice guy, good client. No hard feelings in the past tense there. And that's an employee net promoter score tool. So if it works in Slack, so every month it sends, how would you recommend working it articulate to your friends, and you score it, and then you put a little narrative thing in there, and that comes to me, and there's analytics that come out of that, so I can see where depending, I can see aggregated data by age, team, location, stuff like that. So I can start to see some patterns and trends there. The last thing we're doing is investors and people certification, and the audit's happening next week. So I'm sort of slightly anxious and fingers crossed about that. But that's also been a process of working towards that. Has involved quite detailed employee surveys, not on a 6 monthly basis, which are intended to be diagnostic about improving alignment, engagement, and other management things. So I'm sure there's cleverer things that we could be doing, but I think that seems to work for us.
Yeah, that's a great combination. And if anyone's listening going, I don't know where to start, there's also Tiny Pulse. So we used to use that in HubSpot, and it just sends out a weekly survey. Especially right now, you're going to need to check the temperature. There's 15 to 5, I think it is. It's called
we
as
used
well.
Know Your Team for a long time as well, which I really liked. It used to be called Know Your Company. So that the URL is knowyourteam.com.
Brilliant.
And it does that Tiny Pulse thing of like an email on Friday, what have you done this week? And an email. But it also does some interesting sort of provocative questions, like if there was one thing you could improve, what would it be? Or, how open is the company? Some of them are a little, from a CEO perspective, very scary. Like, I don't want to ask people that.
Don't ask them that. I don't want to know the answers.
My father and mother were restaurateurs, and my father always said, never ask people if they've had a nice meal, because they might say no.
Go on, Dad. And then there's another one as well, Office Vibe. So if you're there and you're like going through that process of figuring out, those tools are just the ones that you've mentioned, Matthew. They're brilliant. It's with the Workbot and the app. Is that how you got into creating apps for your agency? I'd love to know a little bit more about that, because you've gone from the journalist, from the computer games to the journalist, to the content writing, to building a full remote team. But you're actually in app development as well. Can you explain how that all happened?
Well, I'm an inveterate geek. I just like things. It's been a long time since I've written a line of code, but I used to be a coder. How are we doing app development? Well, the first one is Turbine. For anyone listening, turbinehq.com. It's an app that lets you do purchase orders, expenses, and time off requests online. And it's various other bits and pieces in there as well. And if anyone wants to sign up for a trial in the moment, I think we could give people pretty generous terms, because it supports remote working. So anyone listening to this, if you email me, I'll hook you up. But I got into that actually in 2008 because, actually, it's a slightly longer story than that. When I sold my computer games company, I was really excited about the idea of building what became Turbine. And I went around and talked to various development companies. And in those days, you had to rent a bunch of servers, and you had to write a bunch of code to do credit card payment processing. And you had to, literally you had to invent everything to do an online app. And the costing I came up with was something in the order of £500,000. And I didn't want to go get venture capital and start a business. I probably should have done, because it could have been Workday and I could have made a load of money, but the road not taken. But then in 2008, so 18 years later, we had the last recession, and I was thinking about what else I ought to be doing, because at that time my copywriting business shrank quite a lot because the multinationals I was working for cut back on their marketing budgets. And I had the idea that actually now you could go to offshore developers, you could use Stripe for payment processing, you can get it's virtual servers on Amazon or wherever. All the things that were very complicated and expensive and difficult in 2000 had become relatively simple and straightforward in 2008. So roll forward about 15 months, that was when we launched Turbine, but as a subsidiary of Articulate. So Turbine is both a client of Articulate's and a sister company and a kind of a geeky obsession of mine. And we use the same model for another application we built called Hub Toolkit, which is an app that integrates into HubSpot that lets you do SEO and social media stuff. If you're an agency or you do a lot of HubSpot work, it takes a lot of the chore out of some things. We're probably going to change the name because HubSpot doesn't like any words that contain hub anymore. So.
Oh, really? But that's not their word. There is a hub. We can use the word hub, can't we?
Yeah, well, let's not go into that. It's a bone of contention. Anyway, but yeah, but I kind of just enjoy designing this stuff and thinking about it and kind of project managing that stuff. If it weren't so difficult, I would probably like to make another computer game. But anyway.
You still have all that in deep inside you. So, but Matthew, obviously things have currently changed. What are the kind of conversations that you're hearing, and what advice would you give to agency owners right now? I'd love to, we're all in this together, like you said. But can you tell us some of the conversations you're having, and then some advice you would give to agencies out there who are listening?
At the moment, I think it's a little too early. I don't think the clients out there have kind of landed where they're going to land. I think they're all just kind of suddenly finding themselves at home in most cases.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I'd love to have a crystal ball and tell you don't worry, it's all going to be fine, and I know what's going to happen, because I don't.
No,
but I talking to some other agency owners and other people out there and advisors, there seems to be a difference in outcome between companies that are going to be obviously and immediately affected by this. So if you run a pub or a theatre or those kinds of things, that's a world of pain, and servicing those sectors very hard. There are some sectors that are suddenly going to find themselves very busy. Successful. I mean, and I don't. This is not a time to sort of, be gloating about that or happy about that. They're going to be like that because of
reality.
Yeah. But we have a couple of clients who work in the healthcare sector, and for them, some immediate reaction around, look, we have this technology, we have this, we're doing this to support first, the healthcare sector in this crisis. There's quite a lot of work going on there. Mm-hmm. I think that the next category down is companies that are not immediately affected, and this is most of our clients. They're not they've not lost all their business overnight.
Right.
They don't know what's going to happen, but they've got, one of our clients I talked to, he's got 12-month contracts. He's okay as far as he knows. He's going to be fine. I've got other clients who, they make stuff that basically is going to continue to be in demand, or they do services that can be delivered remotely. And, their concern is around the economic contraction that may come, not the immediate impact. So for them, I think, and certainly in two cases, they were very, very heavily events driven. So they were, one of our clients had attended and paid for a big event every 2 months. Like they would have a stand and they would fly 20 people somewhere, and so millions of pounds. And that stopped. And suddenly the people who had a lot of time and energy and money invested in doing that need to find, they need business to come in. I need business to come in. Everyone's like, we just, we have to be box clever and grow the business, get through this and come out strong the other side of it. But how can we do it? Because the thing we used to do doesn't work anymore. So
Right.
this is not like, yippee-yi-yay, we're all going to make a load of money out of this. No, but
No, no.
there are some small silver linings, and I think this is where having those regular conversations with clients, really understanding where their head's at. I think the last thing I'd say, just in my experience over the last couple of weeks, and this is really early days, and probably when we listen back to this in 10 years' time, we'll go, oh my God, if only you had known. But some of the priorities are shifting, and I think there is a growing, for a proportion, maybe a third of our clients, we're shifting from sort of long-term strategic stuff to what can we do in the next weeks, months,
Yeah.
to move, to make sure we're seeing results in that. Or how can we position ourselves if the modeling is, okay, June, July, maybe there's a relaxation, that we're ready for that. So we're talking to one prospect who, they've got a product that they were planning to launch at some time in that sort of summer window. And what they're thinking about is if we can get a minimum viable launch plan and have it ready, in the moment we feel like the coronavirus thing is switched off, we can do it. So there is a need to sort of slightly rewrite the playbook a bit.
Yeah, adapt, be flexible, be open. And I think, this is the conversation I had this morning with a client, and just going, look at every single thing you do, you can teach someone how to do that. We've just named all these different tools, and your clients, your business need to understand them. Everything from things like using video. That sales team that is so comfortable going to a conference and being all charismatic probably have never done a Vidyard sales video. Yeah. Not once.
Sales enablement in the HubSpot.
Sales enablement, yes.
It's a very good point. It's a massive opportunity. Well,
massive opportunity to go.
It's out there.
Yeah, and also to work with that sales team in an authentic way and go, right, let's relax, let's get your skills, do some, there's that whole area of training, because there's sales teams who cannot get in a car now. Yeah. And they have never done a video. They probably never even did a FaceTime. Right? And now they have to learn how to use this. Like every now and again, someone will say something, geez, you're so natural with the video. I'm in my 40s. I'm not a digital native. None of this comes naturally. This is all practice, 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 practice. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Make mistakes, make mistakes, mistakes. So this is years of practice. So it is about practice and getting more comfortable and not being afraid of the video. And then we all have to use the video. So a huge opportunity for you to go, how can I help your sales team all get online? I'll do a Vidyard training course. It's going to take us a month. Individually coach people, team coaching, huge opportunity there to help a traditional sales team get online.
I completely agree. That's a helpful thought for me, actually. So and there's a reciprocal to that, which is agencies who are good at remote selling rather than in-person selling can position themselves well in this situation. And what I mean by that is, in our experience over the last few years, there were prospects we would talk to who would say, well, we don't want to talk to you unless you can come into the office. Or we like your proposal, but we've decided to go with a company in our local city, okay? And, because we want to be able to see them. In practice, are they actually going to see them? Are they going to? No. And we support clients in the US, we support clients in Europe. It doesn't matter.
No.
But there is a perception on the buy side that for some companies that is a requirement or a strike against you. So I am hoping that as people experience remote working, they might start to see that as a positive rather than a negative, or they might be more open to it, whereas they wouldn't be. But here's the other thing about remote working and sales and marketing for agencies. It means you can do work. My catchment area is not a 30-minute drive from where I live or where my office is. My catchment area is basically anybody who speaks English.
The world. Yeah, the world. Yeah.
And we have to do quite a lot to actually go reach them and talk to them. But it suddenly, I think, makes that more obvious to everybody else. So, and since every marketing agency pretty much in the world is now in the same boat, the ones that are going to do well in the future when we come out of this tunnel will be the ones that are able to build on that experience and go, you know, we can service our local area and our traditional clients, but actually now we could do this for somebody in Australia.
Right. Yep. Now the words, and I'm always thinking of the Mad Men, you know, the old school, come in and do a pitch for us. You know, I used to, like, years ago, I remember when I had my own agency in Australia and somebody had asked me to do that, and I'm going, it's going to cost me money, mate. I'm not coming in to do a pitch for you. Like, coming in to educate you for free at my expense. Like, it's tough. So that old school of, oh, we love going in and doing the pitch. Can you translate that energy, that swagger, that charisma, that presentation online? Like, that's going to be the ability, because if you love going into those big fancy offices and doing your big fancy pitch and your boards and your big presentation, can you learn how to switch that on and go, actually, we're ready to do a pitch for you online. Come online. Here's the Zoom room. We're ready to go. Switch your cameras on. We've got all our questions ready. Very good point.
Beyond that, the pitch is there, but also I think this, in a sense, it's potentially disruptive of the traditional buying process, meaning that you can now, I mean, we've always tried to do a consultative approach. We've always tried to do the sort of gap analysis. HubSpot is a discovery call in HubSpot parlance.
Yes.
And that sort of consultative, so lots of listening and lots of Socratic dialogue and lots of really trying to disrupt a request for proposals process and a pitch process and a beauty parade. I do not like beauty parades. You've seen my face. I'm never going to win one. So, you know, I have to be cleverer, right? And but if you're kind of going, well, we're figuring out this online piece and it's, you know, video conferencing sales, but we'd love to do this. Can we just have a meeting and just, like, pick your brains and understand the business a bit? Can you tell us a bit about it? Can we send a questionnaire? All those things that we're trying to do and sometimes do with the sales process that remotely works really well. Now you know every other agency can start exploring that and might find that it would work very well and not end up with I'm in a beauty parade waiting outside a meeting room with 3 of my competitors with my laptop.
I know, because you can imagine how I often thought, like, how deflating that is as well. You're so privileged to get the golden ticket to come in and do the pitch, and you walk in and you're in a waiting room. And a lot of that is psycho games as well, where they overlap people because they want to see how you're confident. So all that's kind of out the window for the moment. So it's exciting. As someone, I'd love to leave this on a kind of a more personal, helpful sort of side of things from your personal experience. As someone who's worked remote for a very long time, what are the routines that you do? Do you wave goodbye to the other people in your house and go, I'm going to work now? Like, what are the sort of things that you do on your daily routines that would help someone who's recently found themselves in their new home office, i.e. the kitchen table?
Well, you say waving. When we get to the end of a video conference, we all sort of wave a little bit or do something. And doing something with your hands on a video conference feels weird, but it's become there's a little bit of a kind of norm for us at Articulate with that. I quite like that. Now we all have to do sort of virtual handshakes.
The elbow.
we're just pioneers. We were way ahead of that. In terms of how I work in this house, I'm lucky because I have a study, so I have the ability to kind of come in and shut the door. In normal times, my wife went to work in like a regular office. So during the day, I was alone. Well, me and the cat. So
your co-worker.
Yeah, she's our CFO. She's our chief feline officer.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yuki, the CFO. But I've never had a problem with sort of sitting in front of a computer and concentrating, right? I mean, that's my sort of geek brain works that way. For me, the hard thing is actually forcing myself to get up and take a break and walk away from it. And Mirella is very good at, now she's here, she says, we're going to go for a walk or we're going to meditate. It's lunchtime, come and have some lunch, stop. Because in her working environment, everyone goes out for lunch or they go to the canteen and everyone in her working environment gets to the end of the day and they get in a train and they come home. So she's bringing something to me as a home that I kind of forget
Yeah.
I think, and these are glib and obvious points, but having a beginning and a middle and an end to the day is really important, and trying to find ways to switch off. And we're all having to sort of ration our media diet in order to not despair. So, there are techniques that you use for both of those things. I think hydration is really important. It sounds really, but you actually can't concentrate if you're thirsty. So,
correct. Yeah.
jug of water.
Yeah, having a big bottle or jug of water so that you can go even if that's like when that liter and that liter half is finished, that's your cue to get up, take a little walk, take a stretch. It could be that kind of thing as well. Yeah.
And the last thing and this works for anybody, whether they're home working or not, but I think particularly for me, is attention management. So it's very tempting. Email pops up, you get a Slack message, all this stuff, and it's demanding your attention, especially if you're an agency owner and you've got people asking lots of questions, you've got clients coming to you. And in order to do creative work, you need to find literally technological ways of switching that off. So sometimes I'll take my laptop and I'll go work in another room and I'd have everything all that disconnected, or switching off the email toaster so you don't get those messages all the time, or giving yourself an email. And one of the things that I have found most effective for me is actually, because I have an online calendar and people can book meetings with me, and like a lot of people do, and I block out Thursdays and Fridays, so you can't book a meeting with me on a Thursday or Friday. Now, I might offer that to somebody, but I get to choose my time. Yeah, as with today, because it's Friday lunchtime. You got two pluses there. It's a Friday and it's lunchtime.
I got the best version of Matthew. Thank you for giving me that.
Finding ways to block out meaningful chunks of time for deep work is fundamental. It's critical, and I know that my stress level rises directly in proportion to the decrease in the time I have to do that.
Interruptions. We cannot. Multitasking is a complete and utter fallacy. Yeah, I agree, and I'm saying that as a woman. As a woman who has ADHD. So we're meant to be, both of those we're meant to be able to do. Like, you can do it, but the quality of work. So I love that time. People are going to have a little bit more extra time here. I think that another one of the fallacies that has, I work from home, but you're not working alone. There's kids at home now. Your other, your significant other is at home now. So this idea of I'm going to do an 8-hour day, I'm going to work 9 to 5, you can forget about it. You have to prioritize what are the important things I'm going to do, try and get them done, take a break. You're going to have to spend, the kids don't understand that when they physically see you, they don't understand that you're working, So making adaptations to that. I had a conversation with them. He's actually a software company, and he's at home and the kids are at home. They don't understand that this is work, dad. They just see dad. They're like, and asking him questions, and hey, do you want to kick the ball around, and hey, can we read a book? Because they just see the same person they see at the weekend, so they're trying to interact with him. And I think that's a very important thing to remember now. Like, take a break on yourself. Everyone's got to get out of this together, hopefully all together as a family unit, the people that you've spent so much time with. But people are going to have a bit more time on their hands. There's some books there that you recommend, I think are probably particularly apt as well. The ones that you recommend by Blair Enns. I know Blair very well, and I feel that they could be something as well that we do have to think about going forward. Can you explain how they impacted you and your business before we wrap things up?
Sure. I went to a paid profitability workshop for agencies run by our lovely accountants, the Wow Company. Now,
I was on their virtual summit last night. It was incredible. They do the bench press reports. They are phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're an accountancy firm that can teach marketing agencies a thing or two. Hats off to them. Well done. Pete Chapp and his crew do a great job. So I went to this profit workshop, sat in a room with a dozen or so agency owners, and we spent over the course of a couple of months 4 days together working on, how do we improve profitability in agencies. And lots of good stuff in there, but it was worth the money and the time for one thing, that I learned, which was read this book called Win Without Pitching by Blair Enns. Right? If someone had just emailed me that, I would have been happy. I would have paid the money and fabulous. So I'm sharing that for nothing. It's not, I mean, the book's out there. Okay, so what is the impact of this? It's a very passionate manifesto against beauty parades and against commoditization of marketing work. So of course it's going to resonate with marketing agency owners, because he's telling you, what you do is valuable and important, and you should be paid properly for it, and you shouldn't be made to dance like performing monkeys to get there, and you shouldn't be judged by your ability to stand up in front of a room and do the sort of Mad Men pitch and all of these sort of things. So that, an understanding taking from that, kind of changed totally the way that we pitch, sell, build relationships, engage with people. I'm giving a very glib and trivial summary of it. I can't stress how influential it was for the agency and the way we work. There's then another book that he produced called Pricing Creativity, which is kind of a clever play on words, because of course we're creative people, and how do we price our work? But also, right, how do you be creative in the way that you price? And it is full of extraordinary insights into the way that people make buying decisions and the way that agencies should present their work. And I'll give you one example, and you need to kind of get the book and dig into it to unpack this a bit. But the insight I found very profound was the buyer is the best judge of what they value. They know what's important to them, right? You might have a good idea if you've done your sales process well, you might have and they know how much money they want to spend. You should ask them, what's your budget? What are you thinking of? What are you spending at the moment? And you should certainly do all that sort of, well, and what's a customer worth, and what's lifetime value, and what's your cost of customer acquisition? All that, you should have done all that. But. And so out of that thinking and that sort of forensic unpacking of the idea of pricing, he kind of lands on this idea of good, better, best pricing, which you see all the time on websites for SaaS things.
Yeah.
So the psychology of, what price you put on the cheapest package, the middle package, and the top package, and the top package should be, unfeasibly expensive. No, you're not expecting people to do it. It's primarily there to make the middle package look reasonably priced. It's a psychological thing called anchoring. But, he says, you don't put these package prices on your website like HubSpot puts its package prices up on its website. Why? Because each engagement with a client should be a creative act in itself, and the pricing of that should be a creative act in itself. So, for client A, in happy times, might be perfectly willing and able to pay £20,000 a month for your services.
Right.
And client B might not be able to pay more than £10,000. And you might do effectively the same amount of work for both clients, and both projects would be profitable. If you can do both, you'd be happy. But why should you commit to doing for client A that work for £10,000 if for them it's worth 20? And that is an extraordinary thing. So I'll shut up in a sec, but it's such an exciting bundle of ideas. There's two bits of that good, better, best pricing that come out. And the first one is people will pay and value different things differently. So, for example, in all Articulate's best packages, I put open access to Articulate CEO for the duration of the project. What does that mean? Whatever we agree, it means whatever you want. But you get to talk to me. You probably talk to me in the better and the basic package. We're a small agency, but you've got open access. Now, for some agencies during the sales process, they meet me, they think for some reason or other, I've got some interesting things to say, or I might be a good contributor, a valuable insight. That's very valuable, but it's not easy to put a price to that, but it justifies another thing you might do in a basic package. You might say, we will give you 20 hours of website development, but the risk is on you that if you want more than we can do in 20 hours, we think we can get it done, but if you want more, because you muck us around or something like that, you have to
Yeah.
buy extra hours at this price. But we can get it to your budget, but the risk is capped for us.
Got it.
On the best package, we will do everything required to get your website into a place that you are happy, and we guarantee to launch it on this day, and we will do as many revisions and as much work as required to make you happy. This is £2,000, this is £20,000.
Right.
And the client who cares a lot about price will do this one, and the client who cares a lot about, hitting a deadline, or look, I know I'm Steve Jobs and I'm going to be a real dick about this, they'll pay. And you don't know until you put those options out on the table what they will value. And if you just go with one package suits everybody, or you've got a rate card on your website, you will never unlock those high value deals.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That really good. And I think now is even better time to absorb those two books and resources, and look at Blair's blog and look at what he talks about and download his material. While we're coming through this state of, I feel like it's a cocoon. We are in a virtual cocoon, a literal cocoon, and we're going to come out as butterflies the other end. Matthew, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing so much valuable knowledge on this episode of Agency Life. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you. Matthew, thank you so much for being on Agency Life with me today in this sunny afternoon. I really appreciate you sharing all of your knowledgeable advice with the audience. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure, and it's actually been the highlight of my day. So thank you for the chat. It's been fun.
Beautiful. It's good to talk. Don't we know that? And that's what my message for everyone right now in the agency community. We're all here. If ever I've seen anything, it's a big rally together. We love to talk. It's good to talk. So do talk. Continue the rest of your day. Matthew, thank you so much. A real pleasure. We'll see you very, very soon.